Namaste. A very warm and a pleasant welcome to one and all present here. This is a Swayam Prabha course in which today we will be dealing with module number 3, which is Epic Harmonies, Musical Narratives in the Mahabharata. We all know that there are two main epics which influence all our lives in our day-to-day experiences. They are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. In this video, we will be discussing about the Mahabharata and the musical references in different parvas of Mahabharata. We all know that Mahabharata consists of 18 parvas, and there are different instances in which we all can remember and understand different interferences of music and its aspects. In this video, we will be learning more about them. Mahabharata is one such epic which has different relationships, different emotions, different expressions, different characters whom we meet in our day-to-day lives. So friends, let's embark on a journey in which we will be knowing the nuances and the intricacies of the Mahabharata, which is one of the two epics of this country. The epic bears testimony to the long-living tradition of music and musical instruments. The use of musical instruments in festivals and other social occasions, as mentioned in this epic, brings out the importance of human in life, and that we can also understand that music has been this everlasting element in the lives of Indians. The musical instruments such as Shankha is replicated as being an integral element, such as in the beginning of the war or to announce a victory, which is supposed to be an indication of, happiness and success. Many drums are also referred in the episodes of battle. Friends, we all are experienced with the fact, after listening to several movies, that the sound of drums is nothing but an announcement that is being made by the king, or a note of success that he has achieved after going on a war. Now, we shall see several verses from the Mahabharata which actually talks about different instruments, different musical aspects and instances that we all happen to actually experience and see in different episodes, or we must have heard from several texts or from discourses. Pushpavrishtim shubhagandhaha shankadundhubi niswanaha asan pariveshe parthanam tathadbhutanaiva bhakta. This is the verse which is taken directly from Mahabharata and which talks about the instrument Shankha and Dundhubi. It seems in Hastinapura, the moment the Pandavas got entered, it seems that the people, out of joy and to welcome them, they have blown the Shankha and the Dundhubi. So this makes us understand that these instruments were mainly in use in those days also. Friends, there is also a very famous example and the verses that are taken from Mahabharata here, as you can see, when Lord Krishna blows his conch, which is widely popular as Panchajanya. Chanda Vriddhi Kshaya Vashad Vrittobhir Turagayasam Panchajanyasya Jananam Ratnakaram Anuttamam. These verses exactly mean there were the interesting verse about Krishna's conch Panchajanya and how it exactly appeared to be. There's also a mention of Veena in between, which says Mahaswanaihi Dundubihi Nabhitaischa Babhuva Tata Sankumlamantariksham Vimana Sambadhana Abhuta Samantataha Savenu Veena Panavanunadana. the resounding with the kettle drum and the deep hum of infinite voices, and echoing with the softer music of the flute, the veena and the tabor, the cars of the celestials could scarcely find a passage through a ferment. So this means veena was widely in use during the Mahabharata times. There's a very interesting comparison between this bow and veena in the Mahabharata. These verses represent Pashopadhanam Jayatantrim, Chapadandam Mahaswanam, Sharavarnam Dhanurveena, Shatrumadhye Paravadaya, which means, do thou like a leader of elephants rushing at a herd, pierce the ranks of the foe with straight arrows of golden wings. Discharge from thy bow. Thy bow is even like a veena. Its two ends represents the ivory pillows, its strings the main cord, its staff the fingerboard, and the arrows shot from it are like musical notes. So it strikes in the midst of the foe that veena was of musical sound. This we are able to understand with the comparison between the bow and the veena, which means the war effect and the musical instrument that is parallelly played, to compare it. During the life of Incognito, when Arjuna got a job in the Virata court on account of his skills in music and dance, these were the verses that was told by him. Gayami nrityami atha vadayami badhrosmi, nritte kushalosmi, gite tava uttarayaha, paridatsva mam swayam, bhavami devyaha naradeva nartakaha, sa shikshayamasa, sa gitavaditam. These verses very clearly mention that Arjuna was just not a good man of bow and arrow, but he was great in the field of art forms. Friends, let's now see what it exactly means. Arjuna said, I sing, I dance, I play on different instruments, I'm proficient in dance, and I am a skilled man in song. O Lord of men, assign me to Uttara. I shall be dancing master to the royal maiden. As to how I have come by this form, what will it avail thee to hear the account which will only augment my pain? Know me, O king of men, to be Brihannala, a son of daughter, father, or mother, and taught the lessons by singing along with the musical instruments. So he confesses by himself in the court of Virata that he would be attached or accompanied to Uttara, who's the princess of the court, and he says he's very good in dance, in music, in various art forms, and that's very, very evident through these Sanskrit verses. There's also a mention of Turiya and Bheri as war instruments which were used during the Kurukshetra war. Let's see what it has to talk about them. Tatasturiyanadaischa bherinam cha mahasvanaihi tavakanam anekani paresham chapi niryayuhu. These verses exactly mention the different instruments that were used during the Kurukshetra war. Those tigers among men contrived for Bhishma of immeasurable prowess a bed with a pillow made of straight shafts, and having made arrangements for Bhishma's protection, they addressed one another in pleasant converse. Then, by the blare of trumpets and the beat of drums, the divisions of thy army as also those of the foe marched out, bheri, mridangas, and musical instruments. So therefore, when Bhishma was on the bed of arrows, it was on that day that in the evening, soon after the beat of drums and the blare of trumpets, this made both the parties to come out of the war field, and it indicates the time that the war of that day has to be terminated. So this is how musical instruments were used in different instances in the Kurukshetra war. Friends, here is another verse from the Mahabharata which actually gives us a good picture of what the importance that was given to different musical instruments during the wartime. Tato vyuheshu anekeshu samutkrushteshu marisha tadyamanashu bherishu mridangeshu nadatsu cha अनीकानां च संह्रादे वादित्राणां निस्वने paradmapiteshu shankheshu sannade lomaharshane. This is exactly told by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra that after seeing the theatre-like vision right from the court, Sanjaya tries to explain to Dhritarashtra that the war is about to start. But how is he able to guess this? So he says, after the divisions of the Kuru army had been arrayed, and a loud uproar, after bheris and mridangas began to be beaten and played upon, after the din of the warriors and the noise of musical instruments had become audible, after the conch began to be blown and an awful roar had arisen, this made the start of the war in the war field. And this was exactly told by Sanjaya to the Dhritarashtra. Here we find Panchajanya, Bheri, Jarjara, Anaka and Mridanga being the most important instruments that were played during the Mahabharata times. It so happened that musical instruments were mainly played and used and were referred in Ramayana, and it is not as much as in Mahabharata as we see now. There's another reference here about Panchajanya. Let's see what it is. Tadeva Panchajanyopi Vasudeva Samiritaha Sarva Shabdan Atikramya Purayamasa Rodasi Pravaditasu Bherishu Jhajarishvanakeshu cha Mridangeshu cha Rajendra Vadayamane Shvanikashaha. And so, Panchajanya, also blown by the Lord Vasudeva, surpassing all sounds, filled the sky and the earth. And while that awful and fierce noise continued, a noise that inspired the timid with fear and the brave which cheers, and while drums and jarjaras, the cymbals and mridangas, O great king, were bit by thousands, great car warriors invited to the Kuru side and solicitous of Dhananjaya's warfare, those great bowmen filled with rage. So here we find a reference to Panchajanya, the conch that was specially borne by Lord Krishna. He tries to blow Panchajanya in the war field, and the sound reaches to earth and sky, and that the sound is very, very fierce. This makes the mark of something new, which means this makes a mark to call upon the foe or to even start the war. So this is how instruments were used in the Mahabharata. And so we can find the meaning here for these verses, which says, Panchajanya also blown by the Vasudeva, surpassing all sounds, filled with sky and earth, while that awful and fierce noise continued, a noise that inspired the timid with fear and the brave with cheers, and while drums and jarjaras, which are another instruments, and cymbals and mridangas, O great king, were bet by thousands, great car warriors invited to the Kuru side and solicitous of Dhananjaya's welfare, those great bowmen filled with rage. So this is how Panchajanya was used by Krishna as mentioned in these Sanskrit verses. Tato deva nikayaste bhutasena ganastada vadayamasu vyagra bheri shankascha pushkalan patahan jarjaraschaiva krikachan govishanikan adambaran gomukhanscha dindimanscha mahaswanam. So, these verses exactly say that the vast assemblage of celestials and diverse kinds of creatures began cheerfully to beat their drums and blow their conches, numbering thousands. And they also played on their patahas and jarjaras and krikachas and cow horns, adambaras and gomukhas and the dindimas of loud sound. These verses exactly makes us understand how many kinds of instruments were made out of animals and how they were blown and what it symbolizes and when they were blown. These were some of the interesting facts that we can know from Mahabharata. Here is a beautiful reference to different musical instruments and what it exactly symbolizes in our day-to-day life, and which is exactly told by Vibhatsu to Lord Krishna through these verses. Nadya nandanti turyani mangalani janardhana mishrah dundube nirghoshaha shankhayaha chadambaraihi sah veenava nadyavadyante shamya talasvanaihi sah mangalani cha geetani magayanti pathanti cha stutiyuktani ramyani mamanikeshu bandinah. This exactly means Vibhatsu, beholding the camp, addressed Krishna with an agonized heart and said, O Janardana, no auspicious trumpet blows today. Its blast mingled with the beat of drums and the loud blare of conches. The sweet veena also is nowhere, played upon in accompaniment with slapping of palms. Auspicious and delightful songs, fraught with praise, are nowhere recited or sung by our bards amongst the troops. The warriors also all recede, hanging down their heads. So this exactly means the same instruments were used, but he happened to be in terrible disappointment that there is nothing positive in and around. There is no sound of musical instrument. Different instruments and beats and drums were not blown, and people did not clap, and there is no positivity in and around. This is exactly what Vibhatsu wanted to say to Lord Krishna. Here, Arjuna laments by saying that his son possessed a voice resembling the sound of veena. Let's see how he says. Tantri swanasukham ramyam pamskokula samadhyanim ashrinvatah swanam tasya ka shaktir hridayasya me. This exactly means Arjuna laments on the death of his son Abhimanyu, stating, melodious as the voice of the male kokila, delightful and sweet as the wobbling of the veena. Without listening to his voice, what peace can my heart have? This is the way Arjuna laments at the death of his son Abhimanyu. So friends, we have known that musical instruments have been a part of this beautiful life ever since age-old texts existed, ever since the two epics were there. So it is always understood that music has been a part and parcel of this beautiful life. Here, we have a mention of musical instruments were sounded to express joy and happiness, sadness and disaster at the time of birth and death. If there were silent, people understood that some mishap has happened. If there are no instruments being blown or played in the kingdom, then it means that the countrymen would understand that there's something wrong, because of which the positive, holy musical instruments were not played. Here is a reference from different parvas. One amongst them is Shanti Parva. The Shanti Parva has references to veena and venu. The string instrument Tantri Vadya, veena, was played during the religious ceremonies like yajnas and for relaxation by the ladies of the queen's court, which exactly says, Veena Panava Venunam Shvanas Chati Manoramaha Prahasa Iva Vistiranaha Sushruve Tasya Veshmanaha. In the same manner, we also have another parva, which is Drona Parva, in which it is very clearly mentioned that there are references to drum class instruments like Mridanga, Jharjara, Bheri, Panava, Anaka, Gomukha, Adambara and Dundubi. So these are the instruments that were mentioned in Drona Parva. In the same manner, we have Virata Parva, which says, there is a reference to Kansya, solid brass instrument it seems. The cymbal, Shankha, conch, and the Venu, flute, and the wind instrument, Sushiravadhyas. And Gomukha was perhaps a cow-faced horn or a trumpet, for it may be. Shankascha bheryascha Gomukha dambaras tatha. These are the verses which exactly mean these instruments were widely in use. Friends, this is the classification of those musical instruments which were used during Mahabharata period. For example, you can very well see that Tatavadya, Sushiravadya, Avnadhavadya, Ghanavadya. These are the 4 types of Vadyas which were classified during the Mahabharata age. Tatavadya includes Yantra, Vallaki, Veena, Tumbaveena, Kachapi, Mahati Veena. And Sushiravadya includes Venu, Gaumukha, Govishana, Shankha. And Avanadhavadya includes Panava, Mridanga, Bheri, Peshi, Turya, Adambra, Dignidam, Mardala, Muraja, Pushkara, Alikya, Jarjara. Ghanavadya includes Ghanta, Mani, Kiddiki, Kanchi, Parivataka, Bhekla, Kalapa, Nupura. So these are the classifications that we find during Mahabharata age, which was widely in use. So friends, with this, we come to the conclusion of musical references in the epic, the Mahabharata. We have till now learnt how many different musical instruments were played, different characters which were embedded with different musical instruments in different situations. We can also see the climate of the Hastinapura, which happened to show its moods through different musical instruments. We also find Krishna and many other characters of Mahabharata using different musical instruments. We find musical instruments for both death and birth, for positivity and negativity. We also find it for day-to-day life and for wartime. We have musical instruments for disaster and for occasions. So friends, we all have got a bird's eye view on musical instruments in Mahabharata with Sanskrit references to it. Thank you one and all. Namaste.